How you doing? I am not DiViNCi. My name is Jason Denton. I'm a professor here in the digital arts program for about 17 years, so a little bit of time. You guys are in for a treat for sure because DiViNCi is about to absolutely go crazy right around here in this area right here. Who went to his earlier thing? Okay, so you see that DiViNCi is he's very passionate about what he does. And you know, if you went to the earlier thing, you saw that he's passionate about business, but now you're gonna see the music side of that as well. For those of you that did not go to the earlier one, DiViNCi has been performing forever. He's been in music forever. He has a group called Soloists of Sound, also Chakra Khan. And for the last 6 years, he's been the band leader for Miss Lauryn Hill. So he's toured the world, and he's an awesome dude. So let's give it up for DiViNCi.
Thank you. Thanks, Jason. Hello, everyone. It's like, hello, hi. Like, it's really awesome hearing all the individual voices pop out. Okay. I'm going to do a lot of talking today. I like to talk, but mainly because I like to kind of give a little bit of definition to what I'm doing here. But before I get to talking, I'm going to do a little quick demonstration of what I'm doing. Is that all right with everyone? Okay, cool. So I'm going to kind of save questions for a little later, but please write down whatever question you might have or just put a pin in it, because I definitely want to answer as many questions as you can. In fact, I've kind of scheduled this hopefully that we can get to as many questions as possible. But in the meantime, I'm going to kind of just show you guys a little bit what I do. Thank you. Just caught me off guard for a second. I was like, I'm hitting the button, it's not making noise. You got to plug it in first. They teach you that here, right? It's good. It's a good rule to follow. Plug it in first. So that's basically what I do. I don't really have a monitor on stage, so I felt like a little disjointed from what I was doing. But once I got into it, you know? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, is I want to talk about getting lost in what you do. But before we talk about that, I want to show you guys something really quick. Okay?
Kick me. Kick me. What was that? An exhibition? We need emotional content. Try again. I said emotional content, not anger. Now try again. With me.
Oh no. All right, hold on a second.
I said emotional content, not anger. Now try again. With me. That's it. How did it feel to you?
Let me think.
Don't think. Feel. It is like a finger pointing away to the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. Do you understand? Never take your eyes off your opponent, even when you bow. That's it.
I like how he walks away like, yeah. Have any of you seen that before? Yes? Has anyone not seen it? Raise their hand. Okay, cool. I just did my job. That's from a movie called Enter the Dragon. That's obviously Bruce Lee. You've seen him on memes worldwide. He's no longer with us. Give it up for Bruce Lee, though. That's a great clip. What's talked about in that clip comes up in my life a lot. Has come up, and I'm sure it will continue to come up a lot. How many of you are familiar with the idea, the concept called the flow? Okay. The flow is also one of these constants that continually has come up in my life. And I guarantee everyone in this room, whether you're familiar with the concept of the flow or not, has experienced being in the flow. The flow is basically this state of being where you're so immersed in your activity, whatever you're doing, that you lose yourself. That time kind of either goes really fast or it slows down. That you're not thinking about what you're doing, you're actually doing what you're doing, and that's it. When you're doing certain things, I'm sure that a lot of you kind of concentrate on the commentary in your head talking about what you're doing rather than actually just doing what you're doing. Does that sound familiar to everyone? And being in the flow is the opposite of that. You're not going to have that commentary going on. It's like There is no thought. You're just 100% in the flow. It's also known as the zone. Is the mental state of operation in which a person performing an activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full movement, and enjoyment of the process or the activity. In essence, flow is characterized by complete absorption in what one does. Everyone been in the flow before? Everyone should be raising their hand, because it's absolutely true. Whether it's been playing video games, making music, or, I don't know, making a sandwich. We've all been a creator at some interval in our life. And at some point, you do get into this place. And it's a really cool place because it's kind of scientifically proven or theorized that it can cut retention of what you're learning about in half. Is everyone familiar with the idea that if you practice 10,000 hours at something, you'll become a master of it? If you were in the flow that whole time, theoretically, you'd only need 5,000 hours. Because there's just that, again, time doesn't exist, and you're so immersed in it. Now, everyone's been in the flow, right? Yes? Is everyone in the flow 24/7? Has anyone in here ever gotten frustrated because they're trying to get into the flow and they can't? Okay. Yes, me too. Again, this is something that I'm sure everyone has experienced at some point. And I want to share with you today, by the end of this talk, a way that I found that helps me most of the time always get back into the flow when I want to. It says getting into the flow is one thing, but staying in the flow when you want to be in the flow is a whole other thing. And in addition, being in the flow and then finding yourself outside of that flow can be frustrating. And what I've found is that anytime you're not in the flow, you're in your head. And when I found that out, I figured, well, how do you get out of your head? And one way that I found is to get into your body. And I want to talk to you about how to do that and explain what that means. But first, I want to show you guys something. There's no audio on this, just watch this nice little GIF. And no, Jason, I don't miss that hair. I do miss having hair, but not that long. So this is what the flow looks like to me. This is my version of the flow. This is from a ton of years ago. I had to find this footage somewhere on YouTube. I just wanted to find a good example of what it looked like when I was 20-something and losing myself. So when I first started music, I wanted to be a music producer. And when I got the gear that I thought I needed to make music, I found the flow really quick. Pretty much everything that I was making, whether it was bad or good, it all sounded good to me, even though it was all bad. I was in the flow every single time. I was so excited to do it. And what I found out later is that flow state that I was in was a pretty low flow state relative to what I eventually found on stage. So when I was 14, I started producing. When I was 18, I moved down to Orlando, went to Full Sail. And when I was down here, I started a group called Soloist of Sound. And that's when I started to take my studio tools out of the studio and onto the stage and started performing with them. Now, on the stage is where I found that ridiculous movement and crazy flow state that I was talking. It wasn't right away that I found it. It was actually not until my wife suggested that I stop sitting down and performing Because I used to sit down on stage with all my stuff. Oh, there's steak on that seat. Gotta eat that later. So I would sit down, and I would just be like, right? And I talked to my wife after a show one time, and she was like, "It's good, but you look crazy." Even more so, like sitting in a chair doing that. She's like, "You should stand up." And it's when I started to stand up that I realized, oh my goodness, you know? This is when I started going, you know, and jumping around, doing crazy stuff with my feet. And to put a long story short, I found a state of the flow that was higher than anything I'd experienced anywhere in life ever. It was so high that I'd call it more than flow. I found freedom. And I'm not just talking about creative freedom. I'm talking about the highest level and example of freedom I've ever experienced in my life. Like to really be free. Not just free to create, not just free to do whatever I wanted musically, but really the most free I've ever felt anywhere in life. And that was an interesting thing to discover, because when I discovered that, it influenced everything else in my life. Like if you find that level of freedom, then that's your standard from that point on, right? You don't get off stage and then start to do other things, and they start to pale in comparison to how you felt at your most free. You know, I found a new plateau in life on the stage, and when I did that, it didn't influence just my life and what I would settle for as far as what I wanted to experience and how I wanted to experience life, but it also influenced my studio workflow. In fact, I kind of became creatively bipolar at that point. You know, I developed this split of, oh, this is what I want to do. And then this other split of getting more and more methodical and getting more and more in my head in the studio, and more quiet and more of a thought-out process. And it was really like being bipolar. It was kind of just like really manic, and then really, it got depressing. And I was like, why is this so different, you know? And that question didn't really come up till later, but like I couldn't help but feel that there was a huge difference between the two. And I was trying to figure out how to bring that back to the studio. Simultaneously, my group is starting to tour more. We're picked up by DiViNCi Records, which at that time was the biggest major independent record label in the States. Put out an album, working on the second album, and I'm learning more and more about the stage, and I'm learning more and more about the studio too. In the studio, I learned that, well, let's talk about the stage. Let's talk about the standard. On stage, I found out that there's reasons why I operate the way I do, and it's because I kind of have to. When you're performing, everything's in real time. You can't think about it, right? It has to go from impulse to action, just a straight line, right? The impulse to hit that button or hit that pad has to be right to action. What's the shortest distance between 2 points? Any math people? Straight line. It's got to be a straight line between impulse and action. And that's what I found, because there's a little bit more at stake on stage. If you make a mistake, you have to own it. And the way you own it, by the way, is you just do it again. Like if you mess up, then next time the loop comes around, mess up again. Then be like, oh my God, he's a genius. Because I thought it was a mistake, but he liked that. He's just eccentric. I mean, what else are you going to do? You got to lean into these things, right? It's a good life lesson too. Just own it. And what I found is that the exact opposite was happening in the studio. I'd have the impulse to make music, and then there was the action to make music, and there were all these deviations between the impulse to make music and then the action to make music. Here's an example. I want to make music. Impulse. Okay, what time is it? All right. I got some time. I can do it. Okay. Is everyone asleep? I don't want to make too much noise. All right, what am I going to make this about? Okay, I'm kind of hungry. Get some food. All right, sit down, make some music. I like that sound. I don't like that sound. I'm going to find a snare. I'm hungry again. Go back to making a snare. Hungry, just cycle, loop at hungry. But anyway, there's all these things that delay between impulse and action, right? There's all these things that get in the way of what you want. And it got to a point where I was making music and taking 2 days just to program sounds, and then I was too tired to even just sequence a beat out. Meanwhile, I was also sitting in front of my computer all the time. I was trying to deal with the record company, working on our second album, deal with promotional stuff for the next tour we were doing, kind of trying to gauge the expectation that fans and the label wanted from us. And this was all just stuff I made up in my head. Meanwhile, because of what I did on stage, because of me following that really free place, it took me so far. It got me to a place where people were saying, "Oh my God, he's the Jimi Hendrix of the MPC. He's incredible, blah, 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 blah." And while I would always kind of be like, "Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that," and try to be humble about it, it did start to seep its way into my process. When I made something, I was thinking about does this, would the Jimi Hendrix of the MPC do this? That's so stupid. But I would think about those things. I even started not getting certain gear. I didn't want to have a laptop on stage with me because I was like, well, I'm the Jimi Hendrix of the MPC. I mean, it's going to be hard to transition to Jimi Hendrix of the laptop, I'm just going to stick with the MPC. It's just dumb things, all this stuff getting in the way between my impulse to make music and the action of making music. And what I found is after a while of doing this, I got really unhappy, It was it's a miserable life to just sit in front of your computer constantly and make up what people think and try to service up this made-up thing with this thing that you love, which is music. And it was around that time that I started to really want to get back involved with my first art, my first language. And my first language is martial arts. Before I started making music, before I could even walk, my dad, who's an incredible martial artist, was teaching me martial arts. It's the way we bonded. It's what we would do every day. It'd be really funny because I was his uke. If anyone's in martial arts, uke is basically the one that's all right, I want to show someone how to knock someone out. I need a volunteer, that type of thing, right? That's uke. So I would constantly be his uke and be demonstrated on, even if there's no one around, let me try something. So that was my day-to-day life, just getting beat up. For fun. I mean, not because, any other reason. Because it's fun, Dad. But I can't tell you how much I appreciate him doing that with me because it was my first language and because there's such poignant lessons in it, it became my reference point for every other language I learned after it. And at this point in my music career where I was kind of just going into this mental hole of what I described, I hadn't done martial arts actively for 10 years. And at that same time, I was I don't know why, but I'm like, I want to do some martial arts. And I don't know if it was my body saying, get up, because you're in front of your computer all the time, and go do this physical activity, or if it had something to do with my dad being stationed overseas during the war at that time. And I'm not sure what it was, and I just wanted to bond with him. But whatever it was, I just had this thing that I needed to do. So I started to teach my friends in my backyard. I started to teach them because no one I knew what I knew. So I needed people to practice with. I needed my own ukes, right? So I started knocking my friends out. And grew the class a little bit. And then I started formally teaching at a dojo, at a gym. And I did this for a couple years. But when I first started doing it and I started feeling what it felt like to teach martial arts and just do martial arts, I started to be reminded of something, and it was being happy. Not just regular happy, but more happy than I'd ever been doing martial arts before. In fact, it kind of felt like how it felt to be on stage. I was like, what is happening? Martial arts, performing. Like there's some sort of constant here. So I started to look at the lessons that I would teach my students. And the very first rule that I had was you leave your head at the door. So you can't come in here and be in your head, or else you're going to get hurt. You know, I teach martial arts for like a way of bonding with my family, my culture. I teach Filipino martial arts. I'm half Filipino. And as a form of meditation, as just a release, just because it's this thing I did growing up. It's just, just like if you go fishing when you grow up, it's deep ingrained in me. So, but I also teach it in the event that, God forbid, you're ever in a situation where you need to defend yourself. Hopefully the right reflex comes out. And I immediately shut down like any meathead coming in, like, I want to learn how to kick somebody's ass, like that type of thing. Because it's a really humble thing to realize that at any given time, you can die. You know what I mean? And you don't mess around with that. I would do knife training in my class with something like this, right? Or a rubber one. I also had these shock knives that had like a little electrical charge. So when you hit someone, it felt like you were being cut. It was really weird, but it was awesome. But the reason I do that is kind of respect the blade. I'd say, anybody in here, what's the first thing you do in a knife fight? Run. Who said run? Yes. That is my rule. That's the first thing you do. Why? Why do anything else? If you can run, get the hell out of there, right? Unfortunately, you don't always have that option, and you have to rely on a reflex. I want to show you guys the very first beat I ever made. Can I have a volunteer? Someone who does music? Okay. Have you done martial arts before? I have not. Okay. All right, you can come on stage. Might be better to do this off stage. We'll see. Maybe we'll wind up off stage. Oh. I'm just playing with you. All right, so in order to show the first beat I ever made, right, I just want to show you the first thing my dad ever taught me. One of the first things called single sinawali, right? Now, do you make music?
Yes.
What are you? Producer, engineer, what?
More of a performer. I like producing my own music, though.
Okay, do you play any instruments?
Yeah, guitar.
Guitar? Okay, so you need rhythm with guitar. You need rhythm with anything. It's a trick question. I knew I was going to get there anyway. So your only job here is I'm going to show you two moves, right? It's 1 and 2. That's it. We're going to do it on both hands. Your only job is to keep the beat going. Whatever you do, relax. Just relax. There, yeah, that's what I want. keep the just relax and keep the beat going. I'm going to do all the work, right? All I need you to do is keep the beat going, even if it's the wrong thing. So 1 and 2. And now we're going to do the other hand. 1. You can move that out of the way so we can do the other two. Not so much back here. Up here is fine. Okay, so 1, 2. 1, 2. No, that's beautiful. If you somebody say that's lit. No, that was great because although he did the wrong movement like that, he kept the beat going. Look, he's keeping the beat going. If you close your eyes, you're still hearing click, 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 right? Let's just, yeah, that's good. No, that's good. No, keep it going. Just relax and keep the beat going. Your only job is to keep the beat going. That click, 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 okay? Click, okay? No, it's fine. It's fine. Just click, click, click. Your only job is to click, click, click. He's doing good at clicking. You should run my social media. Okay? So just keep that flow. Keep that flow. So this is what I would do. This is called single sinawali. It means to weave. Sinawali means weave. And this is just one of the simple weaving drills, right? I'm going to try to mess you up. Okay? Just don't. You smell that? That's the wood burning. It's a great smell. You guys might smell it. So keep it going. 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 That's good. Beautiful. Okay, good. That's fine. What's your name? Vincent. Thank you so much, Vincent. Beautiful. I could have did that forever. Now, the reason I do that, and it's cool that you didn't know martial arts because perfect example of something that's really simple that we kind of overcomplicate with our head, right? Everyone has done this and this at some point in their life. Your body knows how to do this. All I'm asking you to do is to repeat it. If you noticed, when he first started, although we started slow, he got it more consistently than about 30 seconds in. Did you guys notice that? Like he got it, and he even did one of my moves before I asked him to do it. He went like this, pop, instead of ba, 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 right? He went like the second time, that. That's the next step. That's the second lesson, and you skipped ahead. Because you were just going with the flow. And then when I congratulated you, you messed up. It's kind of like, good, how'd that feel? Let me think, pop, you know? So this is a lesson that I would teach, and I would learn so much from it, teaching it, because I was like, oh my goodness, you got to be out of your head, right? Because what you want to happen is, the reason these drills exist is you want to practice something ad infinitum, like forever, for the rest of your life. So that in the event, again, God forbid, something happens and someone goes to hit you or comes up in your face or whatever, you don't go like this, but you go like that. Because maybe they get up in your face and that is enough to like gouge your eyes for a second. Seriously, you know? Which gives you enough time to run. That's called a startle flinch reflex. It's the thing that happens before you could even think about doing something. You know, I had people coming into my class, like really upset that they were in a fight and they didn't, you know, I had a bouncer once and he was like, man, I've trained for years and years and years. I'm coming to you because I want to get back into training because I had this incident with this drunk guy and I went to go do this thing, this hold, you know, and I held his arm, but like he had a really baggy sweater on. So he got away. And he was scared at that point because he saw I was standing, but at the same time, like, what if he wasn't scared? That would have been enough time for him to hit me. I couldn't sleep that night. And I was like, you messed up from the start because you were thinking about what to do instead of being reactive or just like going with the flow of what was happening. The flow, to talk about it again, was the holy grail to my father. In martial arts, the flow is the thing that masters would come up and stuff would happen. They just go like this and you fly across the room. You know? He saw that stuff happen. And he would always talk about doing something so much that it comes out like brakes on your car. Who drives in here? Who drives a bike? Everyone is familiar with the idea of a brake, right? And whatever you do, whatever you do when you're driving, you don't think about hitting the brake. You come to that intersection, your foot naturally covers the brake, you know? It just happens. He wants every movement in martial arts to be that natural, to come out that easily, right? So he'd always say brakes on your car, and he was talking about the flow. So I started looking at all these things, and I was like, man, this is really interesting. I get to see another example of the flow at work, and when people lose it. You saw Vincent, right? You saw Vincent lose the flow. And I knew he was going to lose the flow just because like I'm teaching him something in a sequence he's not used to doing, right? Even if he did practice martial arts, there's a small chance he doesn't do this particular one. And I knew that was going to happen. And it always happens. You show somebody this movement, right? It's just 3 movements. And then at some point, they'll be like, and that happened up here. It's like they're literally looking into their head for the answer, but the head doesn't contain the answer. The answer's already there. You're already doing it. And it comes kind of from a certain mistrust in ourselves, the reflex to kind of question what we're doing, especially when we're doing it right. As soon as I said, really good, you know? And that's exactly what happened in my music career, if you recall. Man, he's killing it. Yeah. You know, I pause. And then I start going down this other trajectory in the studio. And what I started to realize is that just like my students in the martial arts class, I was getting in my head. And I was creating deviations in that straight line between impulse and action. In martial arts, deviations in that line between impulse and action can get you killed, literally. Like you can die if you get in the way of yourself. And in the creative means, it could set a chain reaction to achieve the same thing. At the very least, it could kill your creativity. So I really started to look at this and be like, okay, you don't really learn stuff till you start teaching, right? And when I started teaching martial arts, I was like, okay, I think I get it. And from that point on, I started to like refine the way I trusted myself, the way I looked at myself, and start to realize that every single time the flow was broken with me, whether in the studio or on stage or anywhere, it was because I was in my head. Everyone repeat. Whenever I'm not in the flow, I'm in my head. I want you to remember this, because whether or not it's true 100% of the time, it's a good first question to ask, right? Am I in my head? If you find yourself furrowing your brow, looking up into your head, not enjoying the thing that you say you love to do, or having to force what you love to do, which is absurd, but we all do it. At some point or another, we all have to force ourselves to do the thing that we say we want. That's weird. Why does that happen? Because we're raised with a lot of impulses to not trust ourselves. Okay? And it's everyone's fault, you know? This is the current that the world has been flowing in a long time. Everyone asks you to question yourself. When you were a kid, did you brush your teeth? Yeah. Did you? You know? And then your parents become that voice in your head of like, I should do this. That's what it turns into. I should be doing this. I should. When you should yourself enough, it's just eroding away at the trust you have in yourself. And when you don't trust yourself, that's the biggest deviation ever between impulse and action. You hesitate, and hesitation kills. So, I had to develop this reflex because, again, it's just a flow drill. You just want to do it enough so that it's like brakes on your car. And what I wanted to do was have the reflex of realizing when I'm out of the flow and immediately understanding that I was in my head at that time. That was step number 1. So step number 1 is become sensitive to when you are out of the flow. Don't let it be the standard. Like just because you're used to struggling with your creativity or whatever you're trying to do doesn't mean it's all right. Have better standards for yourself. You're an amazing person. You should be able to live up to that. Let's replace should with want, always. You want to be able to live up to that, right? You don't need, do you say need? Did somebody say you need to? Yeah, you don't even need to. Because you don't need to do anything, really. You could do whatever you want. But everything that you want to do has a consequence. You have to want the consequences, too. So if you don't want to go to your job and make money to pay rent, well, there's stuff that comes with that. So, yeah, I don't want to work. I want to stay home. But I also want to have a home to stay in. So you got to figure out how what you want balances out to an action that you can execute. Because you don't need to do it. Who says? The voice in your head is the same one that's saying you should do it. You need to do it in order to do the thing that you say you want to do. You got to be specific about language. That statement's true. But to make a shortened version of that sentence, you just want to do this, right? So I developed that reflex. Oh, I'm out of the flow. It must be in my head. Think of the flow as like blood going through your body or energy going through your body or something flowing through your body. And then when you're out of the flow, you put a dam here, right? And then it all starts to pool up here, and then you drown in thought. What's the quickest way, those of you who are listening, to get out of your head? To breathe. What are some other things that people say when you're stuck at your computer working on whatever you're doing, or stuck? What's another thing? Walk it off. Get up and walk around, right? What's another thing people say to do? Do something else. Do other activities. Anything else? Drink water. It's good. Pun intended. My point that I have works with all of these things. What do all those things have in common? They break the dam here and get flow going everywhere else. Breathing. You're activating nerves in your lungs. You're taking in the life force that you have. You're focusing elsewhere besides here. There's a greater part of you. All great musicians will say that something comes from something greater or bigger than them and comes through them. The problem is people don't universally apply this. What I found when I started doing martial arts again is there was a greater part of me. And the greater part of me, the bigger part of me, was simply and literally my body. Okay? I was thinking this thing inside of here was me the whole time. I got confused because this was doing so much work. I was like, oh, that must be the guy in charge. It's not. Who you think you are is not who you are. The one asking that question is, though, it's kind of tricky. But My point is that there's a bigger part of you, whether you believe in God or any greater energy, believe in this. There's something bigger than yourself here, okay? And whenever you're trapped in your head, you're thinking that this is everything. Does everyone kind of understand that through experience? Does everyone feel that? Yeah? Is there anyone that doesn't? I'm curious. Okay, everyone kind of resonates with that. And if, don't be afraid if you don't agree. I'd love to know your perspective. But more and more, the more I talk to people and the more I delve into myself, that becomes a constant. There's 20, 25. It becomes a constant, is that there's this, you get in the way of yourself. And you do that by thinking that this is everything. And what you're thinking is everything. That's what depression is. It's just like being really convinced of it, So you got to break this dam. Easiest way to do that, get into your body. Easiest way to get out of your head, get into your body. So many things you could do. I saw Vincent, in his head when I first started showing him. Before I started showing him, I saw him kind of like, all right, what are we going to do here? And I said, relax. Relax doesn't do it, though. Relax is almost a trigger word, If some guy's holding sticks, says relax. So instead, what I said, do this. I call that the DiViNCi shake. I did that all the time in my class. When people got too much in their head, I'd ask them, do the shake. Think of like what Bruce Lee calls your cup being full. You need an empty cup. And think of that cup being on your head or in your head, and you have to shake it out and spill out some of it so you can get some more room in there to fill up again. Shake it out. Everyone, right now, shake it out like this. Some of you don't do it. That's fine. Like, I'm not going to do what he says. That's fine. But, that's kind of the reflex. A lot of my students wouldn't do it either. They're like, yeah, I get it. Let's go. And I'd be like, no, literally put the sticks down and shake like this. And when they would do it, as soon as we went back to going at it, it was, right? Because it always works. What you're doing is you're activating nerves everywhere else. Sometimes I do this when I start to get a little like stuck. I'll breathe. If I'm really stuck, boom. That's getting blood flowing elsewhere. And it's also getting energetical blood, if you will, focus other places. Because when you go like this, you're feeling something somewhere else. And you have to deviate attention and break the floodgates and let the flow come back down, right? Drinking water, breathing, getting up and walking around, walking it off, doing a different activity, doing something else. All of these things break that energetical focus and flow. From being pulled up here to getting back into your body or back into just even distribution throughout. This is what I found on stage. This is why I lose my shit on stage, basically, is because I don't think up there. I started to use this technique in the studio, and that's actually where the name for this talk came from, where I would say, okay, I'm trying to figure out chord progression. Hold on a second. Where am I? Hold on. So I'd start to develop some of these things in the studio into different things that I could do to like trick myself out of it. But it doesn't matter what you do, what technique you create to get out of your head. Just remember, an easy way to get out of your head is what? Get into your body. So that's where I came up with this technique called free your fingers, free your mind, is I'd start to try to come up with chord progressions in the studio, and I'd get stuck. And when I got stuck, it's funny, like there's a lot of randomizer plugins that exist today where a lot of producers will use these that like create random notes. And it's funny because some people use these just when they're stuck and they need to think of a different idea. But I'm like, why don't you trust yourself to be random? right? Why do you need something else to be random for you? So what I would do is I'd be thinking, okay, nope. So I'm like going through all these chord shapes that I know, and none of them are really hitting it. So what I'll start to do is, now I like that, but it's because I just freed my mind from trying to come up with the thing and let my fingers do it. You know? It takes obviously a lot of practice to get your fingers to do these things naturally, but you have to practice it, right? You have to do it. So like my daughter, my baby daughter, she'll like, you know? I'm like, okay, cool. That's the way I play from now on. You know? And I'll just like randomly hit stuff. And funny enough, when I do that, I always find what I want. In fact, I find better than what I thought I wanted. Because sometimes what you think you need for yourself, or think it should be, isn't as good as what it will be, if you just allow and trust yourself to show yourself. There's a greater part of you than just the conscious part of you, and that's the subconscious part of you, okay? And it's great because it's where you're going to find stuff you never imagined finding. That makes sense, right? Because you'd never imagined looking in a place you don't know exists. But I guarantee everyone has had something in their life that has invigorated them passionately, and they got to a point where they, it took that, like that passion took them to a far place. But then at that point, they started thinking about it, and it kind of made things worse, right? Think about the thing that got you there in the first place. You didn't really have a plan, except do what I want. And I'm telling everyone here to do what you want because you are trustworthy enough to do what you want. If I told any of you the secret to success is to do whatever you want to do all the time. Does that sound right to everyone? No, it doesn't. It's not what we're used to hearing. But that's because we're used to thinking that that means, well, I want pizza, and I want to not do anything. But do you really? You have to be honest about yourself with what you really want. You have to think about the whole of what you want. And just not doing anything and eating pizza all day is going to bring you to a place that you definitely do not want to be, right? So you have to consider those things. Sometimes you just have to allow yourself to do it so you can find out, you know what, I don't want this. Let me stand up. Eat a salad or something. But the thing is, you're like, I'm not eating a salad. I just heard someone suck their teeth. I was gonna let it go, but I just heard. You mean I gotta eat salad? No, you don't have to eat a salad, but if you know. Anyway, my point is that you gotta get to this place, right, where you trust yourself enough to answer what you want and follow what you want constantly, but not just part of what you want. Not just the part of you that wants something because you've been denying it from yourself for so long, because that's dangerous. And that's the cycle you get in. You say, I should do this, but I'm going to do this, I should do that, but I'm going to go do this. And then you fall off the stage and metaphorically mess up your life, and maybe literally mess up your life and things like that. But whatever, I mean, it gets to a point where these things get in the way, and you have a bad taste in your mouth from doing exactly what you want. But that's because you didn't do exactly what you want before. You did part of what you want. When you do part of what you want, it messes things up. Do all of what you want. And if you only know so much about what you want, do that. Because as you walk, You'll get to that horizon, and then you'll be able to look around and have a even clearer view of where you'd want to go from there. The thing about trusting in yourself is you always got to check in with yourself. Is this what I want to do? Is this what I want? And it's these things that help you get into the flow. What questions do you have? How did I learn hand independence so well? To be honest, I haven't learned great hand independence. You know, like, I have a certain rhythm that works for me, but I have no, like, particular formal training in what I do. In fact, what I started doing didn't really exist. Like, there wasn't finger drummers, like maybe just a handful when I started. Now it's a whole thing. But when I started, I was like one of 3 people doing it. And I didn't even know the other 2 people were doing it. So, and I didn't have any musical training, like traditional musical training. This is all just from experience. So, and I didn't even know, finger drumming or controllerist or whatever you want to call what I do did not exist then. So I didn't even know that's what I wanted to do. So I just was making beats. And I let my natural rhythm define my style. Ever see Bruce Lee, how he stands? He stands like this. Like this, right? Why does he stand like that? It's natural. It's natural to him. One of his legs was shorter than the other. That's why he stood that way. But everyone that follows his system, Jeet Kune Do, stands like this. Because they think that's the way. But what does Jeet Kune Do teach? There is no way. Right? He did what worked best for him. So you see when I play, like I'm doing certain stuff, and you look what I'm doing, like it's not technically right, but I make it work for me, you know? But to answer your question as far as like how did I develop that style? Practice ad infinitum. The best thing that you can do is love practicing more than you could ever love a goal. Everything you do is a practice for something, okay? Because it's just training over and 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 over. Even when I just did that, I messed up doing it. Saying over is easy, but saying over forever is hard. But that's how you succeed. You have to do the thing that you do forever. And that's how you could maybe, hopefully, not die in a situation that you need self-defense. And in the analogy, succeed in whatever you're trying to do. The person that loves to practice more than is thinking about that goal is going to get further than you. So you got to figure out how to love practicing. That's kind of why one of the things that I do now is called Studio Sensei. I do like one-on-one coaching with people to get them to find out what exactly that means to them. I have business cards up here, by the way. I want everyone to keep in touch with me because this is what I really value doing. And it's this kind of conversation that I've had with myself over and over that allows me to speak so naturally about it up here because honestly, when I didn't do any preparation for today, except my whole life. I just got to talk about my life and what the things that I've come to learn and that have become my Bible, you know? Yes?
What's your opinion on producers starting to put up beats? Like, you think they should do everything free or releasing for cheap just
You said, what is my opinion about people approaching their careers, putting out beats for free, or should they charge for? Excuse me. I think there's a certain amount of paying dues that's beneficial, especially today, because when it comes down to it, the music industry expects a certain thing, and people that are getting music from you via the music industry are expecting a certain thing. I had a friend who was mad that a song he wanted to hear wasn't on YouTube. I was like, you're kind of an asshole right now. Especially to me, because like that's how people get that's like how people get paid. Well, used to. And I mean, you're going to get mad at somebody for not giving away their thing for free to you? mean, you shouldn't expect that, but it is what people expect. It kind of is the nature of things. I think it all depends on what you're comfortable with, man. If that's the route you want to go, make it work. Have a plan for yourself and make it work. If you're not comfortable with it and you keep doing it because you think you should do it, at some point you're going to rebel against yourself and hurt yourself. So, you understand?
When you're on stage performing, do you ever have a combat between your mind and your body during performances where you might lose yourself because your mind might fight your body?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes your mind is like the like really overexcited kid that wants to jump into double dutch. He's like, let me play. Like, put me in, coach. You know, but sometimes you just got to be like, you're benched. Like, let me take over. This is not your game. You know? Sometimes, yeah. Like, sometimes I'll be playing and I'll totally hit something off rhythm or totally mess up. When technical difficulties happen, my mind's just like, ooh, goody, let's go. Like what happened earlier. You know, I went to hit this button, and if I was completely in the flow, I could have just been like, in one aspect of the flow, I could have just been like, roll without it. You don't need it. But my mind was like, nah, they need to see this part. So I developed a different flow, and that kind of made it more interesting, to be honest. Because I like when mistakes happen on stage because it makes it more interesting. So that's one of the reasons I was like, well, I just made a flow about that. I made my process more visible. And then I went back into it. Other question? Yes? Yeah.
My question is basically, what got you into finger drumming, and exactly what was the process of you implementing multiple pieces of hardware at one time? Like, because I know for me, you know, of course I have an MPC, so I can really only use that one, you know, like one machine at a time.
I mean, you only really need one, right? I get it. This is a little superfluous. But it wasn't, because when I started and I needed to do full like hour-long sets and things like that, back when I wasn't having a computer on stage and the equipment wasn't really up to par, I needed more memory. So like before, what I used to do is I used to have one drum machine on stage, and I'd have a Discman playing a CD to play interlude music while I loaded up the whole rest of the set. One of the reasons I got a whole other MPC is it helped me to have more material loaded up at one time, because the memory was limited back then. It's not now, you know, like it's all dependent on what's in your computer. But from doing that, I learned like, I could play two things at once now. That's cool. Play a different instrument here, a drum instrument here, and I can play this with my face. And that became a thing, you know, like face solos and stuff like that. So I started doing that. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to is the idea that, like, it's kind of what I needed at the time to do what I want.
What advice would you give somebody that wanted to get into, I mean, it's first starting off?
Oh, into finger drumming. Man, I will say that there's incredible resources these days to get into it. There's this thing called melodics. I do some stuff with them. I wish that existed when I was coming up. It's actually like almost like a Guitar Hero type of thing, but it's like to teach you finger drumming. And it's awesome. It's really awesome. I use it every single day because it's like, finally I have a way to practice formally instead of just doing shows, you know? Yes? 5 minutes.
Can you show us a quick face solo?
I'll do, how about I play a piece, and if I feel facey, I'll face it up, you know? I'm going to answer a couple more questions, and then how about I just make up something on the spot? Okay? So let's make them quick. What's up?
Yeah, so you know how Lauryn Hill has her own style, like soul house. How did your style of your music that you did complement her style? Was it hard to just do like what she had to do? How difficult was that?
When I met Ms. Hill, it was like kindred spirits, you know? Because of growing up, like really, again, from like 18 up to now, with my group and living with my group for the last 15 years. Soliloquists, we all have a house, call it the Sola Manor. It's like a factory of things happening over there. By the way, we're taking interns if you guys want. Hit me up. Because of that, you learn to communicate really well. And I think it was the communication that really helped that work. With her, she had a lot of the same sensibilities that I was familiar with and that I wanted. Even though a lot of people think she's just about, because she came up around the neo-soul era and things like that. She was actually way into punk and like a lot of different, like merging a lot of different styles. So that was one of the things for sure. But definitely the glue was the communication. One more question, and then we're going to do this. What's up?
Whenever you listen music or make your own music, do you sometimes feel like you're in a different world?
Absolutely. I mean, the flow. That's what that is. When gospel singers lose themselves and say, "Oh, it's not me, it's God coming through me," that's what this is, man. And there's tons of ways to just define it. I think they're all true. And whether you want to call it being in a different world or just losing yourself, whatever, man, like, I constantly get there. forgot to be facey, so I rewound it and got facey. I'm available for questions afterward. I really appreciate you guys having me. I'm sorry I was a little short with some of the answers, but you know, there's time here. Thank you. And thank you to Full Sail, and thank you to you guys. Have a good Hall of Fame.
Give it up for DiViNCi. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it.
Again, I have business cards up here, whatever's left, but most of the information was on the screen on the whole time. At the very least, come up and shake my hand. I'd love to see you guys in the future.